We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
Dozens of Hong Kong pro-democracy protesters appeared in court after being charged with rioting. Supporters continued to voice their outrage as they stood for hours outside the court, braving heavy winds and rain, and briefly blocked a police vehicle.
Pyongyang fires 2 ballistic missiles. Seoul says days after a similar launch that the nuclear-armed North described as a warning to the South over planned joint military drills with the United States.
The ideological divide between Democratic presidential hopefuls comes into focus as leading progressive candidates Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren defend their liberal policies on health care and immigration against surprisingly energetic attacks from moderate rivals.
For some Japanese breakdancers, the prospect of winning a gold medal at the 2024 Paris Olympics has become something of an obsession after organizers in February proposed to include the street dance.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. Dozens of Hong Kong pro-democracy protesters appeared in court after being charged with rioting, setting the stage for further unrest in a weeks-long crisis that has rocked the global financial hub. The announcement on Tuesday night that 44 people had been charged with rioting, an offense that carries a jail term of up to 10 years, immediately triggered another round of clashes between police and protesters. Supporters continued to voice their outrage as they stood for hours on Wednesday outside court, braving heavy rain as the accused rioters appeared before a judge. Release the righteous, no rioters, only tyranny, reclaim Hong Kong, the revolution of our times, the supporters chanted at various times throughout the day. The range of their professions reflected the wide support across Hong Kong society for the pro-democracy movement. They included a teacher, a nurse, an airline pilot, a barber, a chef, an electrician, a construction worker, and unemployed people, according to their charge sheets. The move to charge protesters with rioting came a day after Beijing publicly threw its weight behind Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam and the police, saying violent protesters must be swiftly punished. Amnesty International said the charging of the 44 protesters with rioting was aimed at intimidating others from taking part in future pro-democracy rallies. But protesters have vowed to keep their campaign going until their core demands are met. They include Hong Kong Chief Carrie Lam's resignation, an independent inquiry into police tactics, an amnesty for those arrested, a permanent withdrawal of the bill, the extradition bill, and the right to elect their leaders.
But clearly, this kind of condition will only elevate the violence. Young people will only become more united, right? And stop using the prosecution as a means to curb against the young people. Young people will not be frightened by this thing, but using this kind of unreasonable prosecution and police force will only make Hong Kong getting worse.
We'd just like to tell them that we are here in full support to them, and what they're suffering right now could happen to any of us out here. So we are all as one.
Renewed clashes broke out between pro-democracy protesters and police in Hong Kong on Tuesday night after dozens of demonstrators were charged with rioting, an offense that carries a jail term of up to 10 years. The city is reeling from 7 weeks of mass protest rallies, some of which have ended in violence, triggered by a controversial bill which would have allowed extraditions to mainland China. They have evolved into calls for wider democratic reforms and a halt to sliding freedoms in the most significant challenge to Beijing's rule since the city's 1997 handover. In the latest flashpoint, police used pepper spray and batons on Tuesday night against protesters who had gathered outside a police station in Kwai Chung district. Hundreds were protesting after police announced 44 people arrested in clashes on Sunday had been charged with rioting. Protesters responded to the police charge by throwing plastic bottles and umbrellas. In footage broadcast live on Now TV, an officer could be seen aiming a shotgun at protesters throwing objects at him in a nearby bus station until he and his colleagues beat a hasty retreat.
In other news, South Korea's military said North Korea conducted its second weapons test in less than a week Wednesday, firing 2 short-range ballistic missiles off its east coast. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the 2 devices were fired from the Wonsan area on the east coast at dawn and flew around 250 kilometers into the sea. The North is banned from ballistic missile launches under UN Security Council resolutions. But it was the second such firing in less than a week, despite a meeting between leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump last month. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe briefly told reporters the launches were no threat to Japanese national security. Last Thursday's missiles traveled much further, one of them going nearly 700 kilometers than Wednesday's, and also reached a higher altitude, 50 kilometers compared to 30. Pyongyang said they were newly designed tactical guided weapons that were a solemn warning to the South Korean warmongers over the planned military drills with the U.S.
Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. confirmed Wednesday that the Philippines fired off a note verbal against the reported swarming of Chinese vessels in the West Philippine Sea. Reacting to a news article quoting National Security Advisor Hermogenes Esperon Jr., who said the Philippines is set to protest the presence of Chinese fishing vessels around Pag-asa Island in the Kalayaan Island Group, Locsin said diplomatic protests fired off. I quote, I listen only to military intelligence. I distrust civilian sources of misinformation, he said in a succeeding tweet when asked if Manila will file a note verbal based on Esperon's recommended diplomatic action. When it comes to national security, I am the thinking trigger. The finger is the commander-in-chief, and the armed forces are the protector of people's state, he added. In a forum, Esperon said Chinese warships have passed through the Cebu Strait without prior clearance from Manila. Among others, he said at least 113 Chinese vessels have swarmed around the Philippine-occupied Pag-asa Island over the weekend.
Kahapon, wala na. Well, weather, meron silang pinupuntahan na iba, which is Subi Reef, which is 14 nautical miles away. Subi Reef is the Zamora Reef. Meron silang airstrip doon, at saka port.
Wala tayo doon.
Doon sa baba, southwest. We have not lost an island. At may nababalita na nawala daw natin yung Sandy Cay. Sandy Cay is one of the new accretion. Doon sa tabi ng Pag-asa Island, may 3 Sandy Cay doon na biglang above sea level. Dati, parang hindi mo pa mahalata, pero ngayon, lumabas na.
Climate change din yan.
Well, movement ng water, climate change or whatever brought that about. But dumami, tumaas yung sand doon.
ASEAN foreign ministers met in Bangkok as the U.S.-China rivalry is set to be sharpened as Washington's top diplomat will insist his nation remains a key Asia-Pacific power in the face of Beijing's military machinations in contested areas and airspace. The ASEAN foreign ministers will hold talks until Saturday. They will also meet with United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov, as well as those of Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Peru, and the European Union. Britain's newly appointed Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab will seek new business opportunities in Thailand, which this year holds the rotating chair of the bloc, and strengthen diplomatic ties amid the UK's exit from the EU. In his keynote address, Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha highlighted cooperation and dialogue with foreign allies to achieve sustainable development and regional security through trust, respect, and mutual understanding. Thai Foreign Minister Don Pramudwinai also stressed the role of the ASEAN bloc to lead challenges such as the fight against climate change, growing trade competition among regional powers, and the rise of nationalism. The statements of Pompeo and Yi, who will meet Friday during the East Asia Forum, will garner much of the summit's attention within the context of the rivalry between Washington and Beijing. In particular, the ongoing trade war, the effects of which are beginning to be felt in the global economy.
China stepped up pressure on Taiwan on Wednesday as it announced the suspension of individual travel permits to the self-ruled democratic island due to current cross-strait relations. Relations between communist-ruled Beijing and Taipei have plummeted since President Tsai Ing-wen came to power in 2016 because her party refuses to recognize the idea that Taiwan is part of one China. As punishment, Beijing has cut official communications, ramped up military exercises, pushed diplomatic allies, and ratcheted up economic pressure on the island. The latest move comes as Taiwan prepares to hold a presidential election in January with Beijing-friendly candidate Han Kuo-yu of the opposition Kuomintang Party hoping to defeat Tsai. A program had allowed Chinese citizens in 47 mainland cities to apply for permits to visit Taiwan on their own instead of visiting on group tours. But the Tourism Ministry said in a brief statement that their issuance would be suspended from Thursday due to current cross-strait relations, a move that could hurt the island's economy. The statement did not mention any restrictions on group tours. Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council, the island's top policy-making body on China, issued a statement to sternly protest and condemn the move, saying it was done unilaterally.
In other news, 2020 Democratic candidates addressed President Trump's racism and the need for slavery reparations, a debt that is owed, according to Marianne Williamson, during the first night of the second debate. Let's take a listen.
We'll call his racism out for what it is and also talk about its consequences. It doesn't just offend our sensibilities to hear him say, "Send her back," about a member of Congress because she's a woman of color, because she's a Muslim American. It doesn't just offend our sensibilities when he calls Mexican immigrants rapists and criminals.
The core value behind this entire country's history is working towards a more perfect union, that all people are created equal, and we've fallen far away from that.
We need to call out white supremacy for what it is, domestic terrorism, and it poses a threat to the United States of America. We live in a country now where the president is advancing environmental racism, economic racism, criminal justice racism, healthcare racism. The way we do better is to fight back and show something better.
Well, first of all, it's not $500 billion in financial assistance. It's $500 billion, $200 to $500 billion, payment of a debt that is owed. That is what reparations is. We need some deep truth-telling when it comes.
As a result of slavery and segregation and the institutional racism we see now in healthcare, in education, in financial services, we are going to have to focus big time on rebuilding distressed communities in America, including African American communities.
"2020 Democratic presidential candidates attacked President Donald Trump's immigration policy during the first evening of the second debate in Detroit. If a mother and a child walk thousands of miles on a dangerous path, in my view, they are not criminals, says leading hopeful Bernie Sanders. Here's more.
Lawful immigration. We know what to do. We know that border security can be part of that package, and we can still be a nation of laws. The problem is we haven't had the will to get it done in Washington. And now we have a president who could fix it in a month, because there is that bipartisan agreement. But he needs it to be a crisis rather than an achievement. That will end on my watch.
So the problem is that right now, the criminalization statute is what gives Donald Trump the ability to take children away from their parents. It's what gives him the ability to lock up people at our borders. We need to continue to have border security, and we can do that. But what we can't do is not live our values.
The biggest problem right now that we have with immigration is Donald Trump. He's using immigration to not only rip apart families, but rip apart this country. We can actually get to the point where we have both safe borders, where we have a path to citizenship, where we have opportunities for dreamers. And you don't have to decriminalize everything. The main point I want to make is that what Trump is doing through his racism and his xenophobia is demonizing a group of people. And as president, I will end that demonization. If a mother and a child walk thousands of miles on a dangerous path, in my view, they are not criminals.
Staying in the Democratic debate, the presidential hopefuls also addressed the issue of gun violence, with Amy Klobuchar and Bernie Sanders and Marianne Williamson targeting the NRA during the second debate of the Democratic primary race. Let's listen in.
And we have a mass shootings worth of killings every day in this country. What we're doing hasn't worked because we haven't had a system in Washington capable of delivering what the American people have told us they want. 80–90% of Republicans want universal background checks.
The people are with us now. After Parkland, those students just didn't march. They talked to their dads and their grandpas and the hunters in their family, and they said there must be a better way. Then we elected people in the House of Representatives, and guess what? It changed, and they passed universal background checks. And now that bill is sitting on Mitch McConnell's doorstep because of the money and the power of the NRA. As president, I will take them on.
What I believe we have got to do is have the guts to finally take on the NRA.
The issue of gun safety, of course, is that the NRA has us in a chokehold. But so do the pharmaceutical companies, so do the health insurance companies, so do the fossil fuel companies, and so do the defense contractors. And none of this will change until we either pass a constitutional amendment or pass legislation that establishes public funding for federal campaigns.
Leading Democratic presidential hopeful Elizabeth Warren competes with moderate rivals on the first night of the second round of the Democratic debate, with each candidate trying to assert that he or she would be the best fit for the U.S. presidency. Let's watch this.
Senator Warren?
You know, I don't understand why anybody goes to all the trouble of running for president of the United States just to talk about what we really can't do and shouldn't fight for.
In one of my first debates, Jake, I was called a street fighter from the Iron Range by my opponent. And when she said it, I said, thank you.
Donald Trump is the symptom of a disease, and the disease is divisiveness. And I'm the only one on the stage talking about curing that disease.
I'm as progressive as anybody up on this stage, but I'm also pragmatic. And I've done the things that most of these other people are just talking about, and I know I can get results. And I can lead the people of this country toward a stronger, a healthier, and a more secure future and defeat Donald Trump and return this country to its glory. Thank you.
To other news now, a second case of Ebola has been detected on the Democratic Republic of Congo's border with Rwanda, raising fears that deadly illness could spread. The case was confirmed in the city of Goma, home to 2 million people, according to authorities. More than 1,600 people have died of Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo since the outbreak began in August of 2018, but those have been in more remote areas. The World Health Organization called it a global health emergency last week. More than 1,700 people have died since an outbreak in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo was declared almost a year ago, prompting the World Health Organization in July to declare a global health emergency. Authorities fear that the outbreak may spread from largely rural areas to Goma, a major transportation hub which registered its first Ebola infection in mid-July.
At least 34 people were killed in western Afghanistan Wednesday when the bus they were traveling in hit a roadside bomb, officials said, a day after the UN warned civilians were dying at shocking levels in the war-torn country. The blast ripped through a passenger bus on a main highway in Farah province at around 6 a.m., authorities said, killing mainly women and children. A passenger bus traveling on the Kandahar-Herat highway hit a Taliban roadside bomb, killing 34 innocent people and wounding 17 others, said Mahibullah Muhib, a police spokesman for Farah province. All were civilians, mostly women and children, he said. Sadiq Siddiqui, a spokesman for the Afghan presidency, confirmed the toll, blaming the incident on the Taliban. There was no immediate confirmation from the insurgents that they were behind the blast. The Taliban, which has resurged since its regime was toppled by the U.S. invasion in 2001, made a vague pledge this month to reduce civilian casualties. On Tuesday, the UN released a report showing that casualties have dropped 27% in the first half of 2019 compared to the same period last year, which was a record, but nonetheless 1,366 civilians were killed and another 2,446 injured. Child casualties represented almost a third of the overall total of civilian casualties.
And the news continues here on Eagle News International. We'll be right back.
For Business News, this is Cesar Vallejos. The Securities and Exchange Commission said its effort to cut processing time for company registration and its other initiatives to make the country business-friendly allowed it to be recognized by businessmen as one of the top-performing government agencies. The SEC landed in the top 10 in the latest Executive Outlook survey conducted by the Makati Business Club in partnership with the Management Association of the Philippines on the performance of government agencies. The top-performing agencies aside from the SEC are the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, National Economic and Development Authority, Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical and Astronomical Services Administration, Department of Trade and Industry, Philippine Statistics Authority, Department of Finance, Board of Investments, Department of Tourism, Armed Forces of the Philippines, and the Philippine Economic Zone Authority. The results of the latest survey serve as another vote of confidence in our unwavering determination to create an enabling regulatory environment for business and investment, SEC Chairman Emilio Aquino said. The survey asked 100 executives from 100 companies whether they were satisfied with the performance of government agencies in the past year from July 2018 to June 2019. Of the 69 government agencies assessed, 42 received positive satisfaction ratings. Newly appointed Philippine Airlines President and Chief Operating Officer Gilbert Santa Maria said on Tuesday his priorities would include maintaining the airline's current quality of service as well as profitability. Santa Maria called on Captain Jim Sidionco, Director General of the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines, at their compound in Pasay City. The flag carrier matters. That's one of the reasons I took the job, he said. Santa Maria, who was handpicked by PAL Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Dr. Lucio Tan, toured the NAIA Terminal 2, accompanied by Vivian Tan, PAL Executive Vice President and Chief Executive Officer. Santa Maria has 3 decades of executive management and leadership experience across multiple industries in companies around the world. He said his appointment came as a shock for him since he has been living on the other side of the Pacific. For the last 15 years, Santa Maria was a key leader and contributor in the Philippines' highly successful BPO industry, serving as COO of Washington, D.C.-based BPO company Ibex Global. Before Ibex, he was COO and CFO of IQ Back Office, a California-based finance and accounting outsourcer that was an investee company of Livet Investments, Ayala Corporation's BPO holding company, and more. The Office of the Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship, in partnership with Go Negosyo and Globe Telecom, with the participation of the Angat Lahat sa Digital Alliance, continues to intensify its purpose to influence and educate MSMEs on digitalization as a way to achieve inclusive growth with MSMEs, Vin Pascua reports.
To intensify promotion and digital awareness among micro, small, and medium enterprises o MSMEs, the Office of the Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship, led by Presidential Advisor Joey Concepcion, in partnership with Go Negosyo, organized a meet and greet with Mr. Ernest Koo of Globe Telecom with the participation from the Angat Lahat sa Digital Alliance members. The Digital Alliance aims to influence and educate more Filipinos about digitalization as a way to achieve inclusive growth with MSMEs.
The trust. That's something that we are facing as an industry. One way that we think we can soften the minds and the hearts of the Filipino to accepting digitalization is through this campaign that we've started in July. We're showing the difference between a non-digital Philippines and a digital Philippines. So we're trying to show the Filipino how different it will be if their lives have some sort of digital access.
To shift from a predominantly analog economy in the Philippines towards a more democratized digital economy, to provide insights on how the government can play a key role in guiding the MSMEs towards the digital economy, thereby strengthening relationships by the private and public sectors, alleviating poverty. The Angat Lahat sa Digital with Mr. Ernest Gu intends to gather insights on how Globe Telecom can play a key role in guiding MSMEs towards the digital economy and contribute to the goal of Angat Lahat sa Digital Alliance towards poverty.
6 years, we've spent close to $40–50 million on shoring up our cybersecurity practice because we know there's so much information in the Globe ecosystem. Location, where you are, from that location we know where you live. Right? From how you move around, you'll know what your income levels are. From your spend in prepaid or postpaid, we can tell how good you are at credit or not, as you could probably tell. And all that has to be protected. So I think those are the best practices. And that's why sometimes, I mean, maybe not in this room, but in some Philippine corporates, I'm still appalled at the level of awareness when it comes to cybersecurity. They don't want to spend the money until they've been hit. By that time, people's information is leaked out already. And some of these enterprises are not your small enterprises. These are your big enterprises.
Globe is always at the forefront of digitalization, and through its MSME arm, Globe My Business, the company continues to provide affordable and tailor-fit digital solutions to entrepreneurs to help them grow and succeed. At the same time, Globe My Business Academy was created as part of Globe's mission to inspire, empower, and provide learning experience to MSMEs all over the Philippines by being a source of expertise and guidance to startup owners as well as experienced business entrepreneurs.
Even more importantly is the Filipino habit and the issue with trust with anything. Right? Anything new in the Philippines is very difficult to launch. You have that issue, right? That's why they do COD. Because they want to make sure that the product they order is what they don't realize that it is going to be what they ordered, right? It's a problem. Look at our tollways. How many people use those RFIDs relative to the cash? And that's been longer than GCash or whatever when we scaled, right? The QRs of GCash have only been around like a couple of years or 3 years. But those toll things have been around for a long time and they still don't do it. Right? Look at MRT, LRT. Majority of the electronic tickets are single ride tickets. There's nothing in the wallets. It's a good thing you have GCash and even Paymaya, that they have money in the wallets because they're multi-purpose wallets. Right? So we're working very hard to actually build the trust that the money will not get lost. It's actually quite interesting because if you think about it, people load their prepaid telco accounts every day and they put money there, albeit small amounts, right? And they expect and they know it's not going to get lost. But it's hard to build that trust in the Filipinos, right? And also, I think anything new sometimes in this country takes a little bit of time.
The event was attended by the Digital Alliance members and other digital company platforms.
I think the loudest we heard was about the permits or ease of doing business. So together, we're trying to solve that by doing a dialogue or multiple dialogues with the different agencies that have to do with this regulatory framework, that if they understand the needs of the industry and the consumer better, then we expect that they would be able to work with us more in collaboration than in restriction. We are focusing on 3 particular pillars: the money, the market, and the mentorship. Or in the more popular term for that is training or capacity building, right? But we call it mentorship because it's more than just feeding you information. It's also coaching you to thinking digital.
For Eagle News, Ven Pascua. I am 1 with 25.
The body of billionaire Indian coffee magnate V.G. Siddhartha was found by a river in southern India on Wednesday, a day after a letter revealed his concerns over deep financial problems and perceived harassment from tax authorities. The discovery by fishermen ended the 2-day search for the founder of the Cafe Coffee Day empire after he was last seen by his driver walking across a bridge in the city of Mangalaru. Politicians and business figures called immediately for a probe into Siddhartha's death as well as the allegations in his letter of harassment from lenders and tax authorities. The government should hold a proper investigation into his tragic death former Prime Minister H.D. Deve Gowda said on Twitter as he expressed shock. Police said Siddhartha, aged about 59, left Bangalore late Monday, telling his family he was going to a hill resort, but instead asked his driver to take him to Mangaluru. He ordered the driver to stop the car and started walking along a bridge as he talked to someone on his phone before disappearing, according to police. Fishermen finally found his body early Wednesday on a riverbank, according to police. Siddhartha's empire came under increasing pressure after tax authorities launched raids on company offices in 2017. In a letter to the Cafe Coffee Day board, the 57-year-old chairman had admitted mistakes in handling his financial affairs. But he said he had suffered pressure from lenders and Indian tax authorities. Siddhartha said he had faced a lot of harassment from Indian tax authorities. Siddhartha, whose family had been in the coffee business for 130 years, opened his first Cafe Coffee Day store in 1996 and went on to become one of the world's biggest coffee traders. He owned Asia's biggest coffee plantation, and his company was India's biggest coffee exporter. The chain has more than 1,700 stores, mainly in India, but also in Malaysia, Egypt, Czech Republic, and Austria, employing more than 30,000 people. Its shares slumped by 20% for the second straight day on Wednesday as news of the body was released. U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin finished two-day talks with their counterparts in Shanghai. U.S. and Chinese trade negotiators agreed to meet again in the United States in September after holding frank, highly efficient and constructive talks in Shanghai on Wednesday, state media said. U.S. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin and U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer met with Vice Premier Liu He in the Chinese financial hub for the first face-to-face negotiations since a trade war truce was declared last month. The two sides conducted frank, highly efficient and constructive in-depth exchanges on major issues of common interest in the economic and trade field, according to the official Xinhua news agency. Negotiators also discussed the issue of China increasing its purchases of U.S. agricultural products according to its domestic needs and the U.S. creating favorable conditions for these purchases, Xinhua said. Shortly after the U.S. negotiators arrived in Shanghai on Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump lambasted China on Twitter, accusing Beijing of not buying agricultural products as it was supposed to do. President Trump also warned China against waiting until the November 2020 U.S. presidential election to make a deal, because when I win, the deal that they get will be much tougher than what we are negotiating now, or no deal at all. That's it for business news. This is Cesar Vallejos. I'm 1 with 25. Eagle News International will be back. Stay with us.
Watch your favorite Net25 shows on OSN channel 725, same day as the Philippines. Watch your favorite Net25 shows live and on demand anytime, anywhere on any mobile devices on OSN Play.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights. Sharpen your instincts for smart decision making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovations, social entrepreneurship, and other leading edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
Over the past 48 hours, the area of forest fires in the Krasnoyarsk region has increased by 50,000 hectares, exceeding 1 million hectares. The territory engulfed in fire is already comparable in size to the whole country of Montenegro. According to the data of the Forest Fire Center, there are 99 forest fires in the region and the total area is 1,042,434 hectares. Most fires are in hard-to-reach areas, the so-called control zones, where the authorities decided against extinguishing the fire since it is economically impractical. According to Greenpeace, more than 3 million hectares of Russian forests are currently engulfed in fire, which is comparable now to the territory of Belgium. The total area covered by forest fires this season has already exceeded 11 million hectares, more than Portugal or Slovakia and Croatia combined.
Natural disasters, some linked to climate change, caused $9 billion more damage in the first half of 2019 than last year, according to a toll published Tuesday by German reinsurer Munich Re. June brought a stark heat wave to Europe and especially Germany, harming harvests, while hailstorms inflicted 900 million euros of damage in Europe. The impact of ice showers in Greece and Italy in early July has not yet been totted up. A number of specific studies indicate that the heat waves are increasing due to climate change and hailstorms as well, said Munich Re's chief climate and geoscientist Ernst Roch. The reinsurer noted that tornado season in the United States had been considerably more active than usual, with 1,200 twisters counted by the end of June, around 20% more than the average between 2005 and 2015. In the Asia-Pacific region, Australia's Queensland state was struck with floods that inflicted $2 billion of damage. Of the $42 billion worldwide disaster damage total to the end of June, just $15 billion was insured, Munich Re said. And the costs of floods in Southeast Asia in June, likely in the billions, has not yet been reckoned into the figures. Catastrophes also cost around 4,200 human lives, 100 fewer than last year, and a fraction of the 27,000 killed on average in the first 6 months over the past 30 years. The most deadly disaster was Cyclone Idai in March, which killed more than 1,000 people, mostly in Mozambique and Zimbabwe.
For some Japanese break dancers, the prospect of winning a gold medal at the 2024 Paris Olympics has become something of an obsession after organizers in February proposed to include the street dance. Take a look.
「もちろんこうファイトの意味の強い気持ちもあるし、でもダンスとしてのエンジョイの部分もあるし、なんか両方楽しいっていう気持ちもあれば勝ちたいっていう気持ちもあるし、両方とも自分のダンスする、ブレイキンする時のエナジーに変えて本番踊ってる。
自分もそのオリンピックっていうのになるのを聞くまではダンスのことスポーツっていう観念で考えたことが今までなくて、もうなんか絵とか写真とかと一緒で勝ってなくても個性があって、それがなんかアートみたいな。
You gotta have the right moves. Yeah.
I used to. Never mind.
Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
That's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles and
we're one with 25.